we try to interact with leading financial and Islamic finance experts to understand better the whole situation in these difficult times. Today's webinar is the role of multilateral institutions in promoting Islamic finance in the coming years. This is the title. And we have two wonderful speakers. One is Mrs. Concepcion Aisa. She works at the World Bank and is a seasoned international executive in the financial sector and banking industry, working in a variety of positions in leading private and public financial institutions. Her areas of expertise include debt issuance, structured finance, securitization, and sustainable finance. She is currently focusing on designing financial solutions for client countries and emerging markets. Welcome, Concepcion. And our other speaker is Mr. Raja Almarzoqui. He's from Saudi and is a former IMF advisor. He's also associate professor of economics at Prince Saud Al Faisal Institute of Diplomatic Studies, expert at the IMF and part-time consultant of the Ministry of Economics and Planning in King Saudi Arabia. In addition, Raja worked as consultant to many government, private organizations, and regional and international organizations. Marhaban. So, in order to focus the conversation, okay, the development of Islamic finance is a joint effort of many different initiatives. With the support of multilateral institutions, it enables the Islamic finance industry to thrive even further. Their active role undoubtedly have a significant impact to Islamic financial industry landscape, given their wide and global membership coverage, financial capacity, as well as professional human capital capability. So in this conversation, we'll try to discuss what is the role of the multilateral institutions and maybe how various Islamic finance instruments could be used to support the recovery efforts in different countries, especially after this pandemic crisis that we are living. So, Concepcion, I would like to ask you our first question, okay? And you know, the COVID-19 pandemic and economic lockdowns have severely hurt global economic activities. In a bid to cushion the impact on household and businesses enterprises, most governments have introduced various policies and massive stimulus programs. So, as far as you know, what is World Bank doing to alleviate this situation?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Gonzalo and the team for inviting me to this conference, and congratulations to IE and to the Institute for having this initiative to foster everything that has to do with Islamic finance, no, and the important role that can play in society and in financial systems. So at the World Bank, actually, I think what is happening nowadays is our reason for being, and the multilateral, the role that can play given this crisis is crucial, because actually, in a way, our role can be seen as catalytic. I mean, there is not enough funds, and there are no enough funds in the system to face the challenges that right now many countries have. So, I mean, we are seeing this everywhere. So we need the other players to also play a role, right? The private sector, governments. So this means that with all of them, we can in a way leverage and have a strategic role. And this is in a way our position. I mean, in order to do this, we are developing several special funds for COVID-19. We are also, for example, this morning we were negotiating along with an Arab country that it includes certain characteristics of fast disbursement that before they were not available, but this allows them to disburse very fast and to have liquidity, which is one of the major problems that many countries have. And we keep working very closely with our colleagues from the IMF, because in a way they are, I always say that they are like the doctors and we are the nurses, no? So they are the doctors, they give the prescription and then they come to us and we try to somehow execute that program, no? So I think the role that multilateral institutions right now have is very, very important. In a way, it's a test for us, right? Whether we are really relevant or not, and whether we can be relevant or not, because we were created for situations, especially like these ones. So how can we make us relevant and make things work and help our country clients? That's how we see it.
Okay, thank you. Very, very interesting. And Raya, welcome. And you must put your micro. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So speaking now more about Islamic finance. In your opinion, how various Islamic finance instruments can be used to support the recovery efforts in different countries? As an expert in Islamic finance, with a particular focus on those countries with significant or growing Islamic finance sectors?
Thanks, Gonzalo, for this question. I think the issue is really wider than just only the finance part of it. So if we think about Islamic finance, it can cover many parts, either in the commercial banking side or in the financial institution side, or also in non-profit type of institutions. So if we think about this group of institutions and what it can provide, that will relieve some of the COVID-19 or even any recessions compared to the normal financial institutions. Let me, for example, considering zakah or charity part, where zakah is mandatory on Muslims, where it's channels through most of the time non-profit organization to Muslim, that will reduce the impact on household. And during the recessions or during the severe time, even the zakah for the upcoming year could be under some fatwa and some scholar agreement to be submitted a year ahead to help covering some of the issue. So when it's coming to the non-profit organization, there is a wider range, including WAQF, including this kind of an NGO that can be part of the solutions. When we come to the commercial side, like banking or financial institutions or takaful, all these type of institutions, as we know, most of the time, these institutions tie their instrument to the real sector. So as they tie it to the real sectors, then they usually go in more beneficial for the economy kind of products that will have a positive impact and will enhance the growth. The second most important part, this is in principle of the economy, most of the time, Islamic financial institutions in both sides, the commercial part or NGO, both of them, they most of the time avoiding the debt type of contract. So this will reduce the size of debt to economy. As you know, Gonzalo, there are a lot of empirical studies that try to link the volatility of the economy to the size of the debt that the economy carry. Some scholars like Stiglitz and Locus and others, they discuss the size of debt to the size of financial institutions and what's carrying from debt to the real sector. If it's more than 80 or 90% of the economy, then the economy starts to have some volatility and start to have a negative impact on the economy. Over in the Islamic finance, most of the time we find this type of debt is less. Yes, now big size of Islamic finance is in a banking sector, and the banking sector, as you know, supervised by central bank, and central bank, as you know, they binding with the Basel rules. And when we consider Basel rules, how they dealt with the bank, either Islamic or non-Islamic, as a financial of just intermediary between savers and investors. So it's just giving loans. So the Islamic bank in this case tried to be adapt the Basel rules by creating some kind of that type of contract like murabaha, which less benefits to the economy compared to the equity side. And this coming to your questions about the role of multinational institutions and regulators in a global level. How can they enhance the role of Islamic finance to make it more beneficial and more related to maqasid al-sharia or objective of al-sharia, which basically in principle, they reduce the barrier between the financial institutions and the real sectors, where the Islamic finance mostly financing through equity or through providing some goods and materials to the real sector. So it's tightening its product to the real sector. So this is make it less effect during the financial crisis in a negative side, and have a positive side of reducing the pressure on the economy compared to the normal conventional bank, which most of the time they have a collateral and they give more debt. And during the financial crisis, they ask the loaners to the borrowers, to pay them back on time. And if they could not, they will sell the collateral which they have. And this is make the recessions deeper and have a negative impact more than if it's, for example, on the equity side, if these banks just involved with the real sector in giving more equities or have more equity with them and sharing the risk, then in this case, will reduce the impact of the recession. Of course, the recession will be there, but it will make it less deep than a normal side. So when it's coming to the COVID-19, the current situation which we are in, then I think both sides of Islamic finance, the commercial side of it, and also NGO should play bigger roles. And this is lead us to maybe considering their future role and give more regulation that will hence these institutions to be more part of the economy and have a benefit effect in this case on the society, on the household side when it's coming to the support and help SMEs, or on the commercial side and in financing the growth of the economy. So these will help in the future with the right regulation and hence them with what we have now. We have actually now a good regulation. It's not bad, but I think we need more specifically when it's come to Basel to distinguish Islamic bank from conventional bank, because more than around 70% of liquidity now and asset under management in Islamic finance under the hand of commercial of Islamic bank. So without such a regulation, that will help them to go more on the equity side. This will reduce the benefit that might have on the economy.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. I think people have comments about that. So if you have any questions from the audience, please, you can just chat make the questions in the chat, and I will choose some of them, okay? Just to make the flow. And Concepcion, I think there are four main multilateral institutions that have played significant roles in promoting Islamic finance in the development of Islamic finance industry, like the ISDB, the ICD, the IMF, and of course the World Bank. And I know that in 2014 there was like a vaccine sukuk for the International Finance Facility for immunizations, and I realized that this is very interesting because now we are in a situation that everybody is looking for a vaccine. So I don't know if you can speak to us about what World Bank is doing to support Islamic finance, and also about this particular project or sukuk?
Yes, of course. So, well, the World Bank has a whole department, no, dealing with Islamic finance. Actually, I think the current CFO of the Islamic Development Bank was coming from the World Bank Treasury. So, I mean, that's something that we keep very much in our heart. That's something that, and we have done this through support in the development of, for example, sukuk laws in several countries. And in others, we have helped them to issue the first green sukuk, as in the case of Malaysia, no, recently. And then I'm going to the case you just mentioned, the IFIM, which is the International Facility for Immunization. This is one of the innovative structures that we are most proud and in the World Bank Treasury, and I think that is especially relevant nowadays, given the situation we are facing and the fact that we are looking for a vaccine. So this is a structure that it was created and is based on the securitization of donor pledges over time, right? So basically it's a structure, IFIM, securitized donor pledges of donor countries that they have committed over a certain period of time, and against those donor pledges, as the intermediary agency, the World Bank Treasury issues bonds in the market. And with the proceeds of those bonds, what we do, there is Gavi, which is the Global Alliance for Vaccine and Immunization, who buys those vaccines in the market for the developing world. And what happened is that, of course, in this process that I mentioned of securitizing the donor pledges, when you issue the securitization bond, we realized that there was a niche of liquidity of investors that they had sukuk appetite, right? And that they were especially willing to invest in this kind of bonds that will have as the outcome and the impact things like buying vaccines. So that's the reason why we issue this sukuk as part of the funding strategy of IFIM, and to take advantage of that liquidity in the Islamic finance market. Having said this, I can tell you that with the liquidity that there is in this market, and given the rules and regulations of Sharia compliance, you can make them very much aligned to SDG, right? To Sustainable Development Goals, or to what is sustainability. I mean, they are not very much apart. So in that sense, to make a sukuk as part of the funding strategy of IFIM was not very complicated.
Yeah, okay. Later, I want to speak more about SDGs, okay? Maybe later I will.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Okay, Raja. So,
sure.
As an expert in Islamic finance, in my opinion, Islamic fintech could be key for democratizing financial services and supporting the most vulnerable of communities in line with SDGs, okay? Especially to get a better financial inclusion. I don't know how you see now the development of Islamic fintech in the Islamic finance industry. Do you think could be now the right moment with all this digital life we are in?
I think it's not only for Islamic finance, but for the whole financial institutions and for the whole economy. This COVID-19 moved us very fast to the digital economy, faster than what we expected. And when it comes to Islamic finance, I think fintech will help the Islamic finance to reduce the cost, to also increase and widening its outreach, especially there is some small Muslim communities that live in different places in this globe, who might maybe able to access some of this Islamic financial institutions instruments to help them in some of their either consumption side or maybe investment side, even for SMEs. So the fintech will enable the Islamic finance to outreach even for the small communities live in different places in this globe, and reduce also the cost. And in addition to that, it will make even the outreach and the ability to help and support SMEs easier when it's come through the fintech, given the cost of providing the services compared to the main institutions. And as you know, with the fintech, the cost and the outreach and also the ability to interact completely different than the normal traditional institutions. So I think there is a big promise for the whole financial sectors and for Islamic finance, specifically given that different Muslim community living in different places where it's difficult to develop for them specific institutions, and also to widening the type of instruments and institutions that might through the fintech able to build and outreach all Muslim community, and also provided, and this is really important, an alternative and maybe different products when it's come to finance, not for Muslims, but also for the whole humanity, because some of this instrument and some of these products, it's type of different risk. Some investors and some also consumers, they might want to use them because it's either diversifying the risk when it's come to the investors, or maybe have a different risk when it's come to consumers, given the volatility of the interest rate and the type of fixed interest rate through murabaha that some of this instrument may be provided, or when it's come to SME. So it's not only for the Muslim community, it's not for the Muslim countries. I think it's a wider range of people. And this has taken me to the financial crisis of 2008, as you noticed, when there is a big drop, when the crisis came actually through the financial institutions. And after that, we noticed there is a shift a little bit away from debt to more equity, specifically in literature and in theory and some articles. And also some institutions, they move a little bit away from debt type to more an equity side to reduce the impact on the economy. So I think now with this COVID-19 and with what we have now and the crisis that hit our globe, the Islamic financial institutions, through maybe fintech, will widening the range of consumers that are providing the service for them, will reduce the cost, and will also emerge as a more growing institutions to help the whole globe, and growing maybe even faster than what used to be. Because if you notice, the Islamic finance is growing by about 15 to 20% annually since 1975. So this could be even higher for the upcoming year, given what we have and the impact coming from this kind of institutions that focus on more in debt and what's the Islamic finance provided.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, Concepcion, talking about the SDGs. Okay, the Vice President Mahmoud Mohieldin said in the World Bank Senior Vice President Mahmoud Mohieldin said in 2018, the future of Islamic finance has to be more associated with SDGs. It is very much compatible with what they stand for: responsible governments, inclusive growth, equitable society, and sustainable world resources and environment. What is your opinion about that? I mean, do you think this is a clear alignment? Because in the industry, sometimes there is different perceptions about that.
Well, as our senior VP said, I mean, for us, there is a clear compatibility, right? And I mean, you approach the same subject from a different perspective, but the outcome is very much the same. And especially when you are doing sustainable finance, one of the most important things is the reporting. So of course, you always, as long as you have transparency and you are letting your investor know what they are buying, I mean, the investor can just judge, no, by himself or by herself, and decide whether that's sustainable or Sharia compliance enough. But what we have seen that in issues of sustainability, the principles that lay behind Islamic finance are very much aligned. And that's the reason, for example, why we helped the Malaysian government with the issue of the first green sukuk, right? I mean, it was not that complicated to align the sukuk structure, which is an Islamic finance bond, with the green structure, right? The fact that it was going to help projects on energy efficiency and renewable energy. So definitely we see that there is some overlapping there. I mean, we think that if you go to extremes, of course you can always be extreme, being super green and being an Islamic very strict, and then maybe there are issues of disagreement, but of course there is some overlapping and compatibility that we believe that it should be explored and leverage, no, in order to help the situation where we are, and of course and especially I would say to find synergies, no, and I think that's a key word, to leverage both and to help. I mean, I can tell you that with some utilities in the Middle East, we have been trying to help them to issue green sukuks as well. Not just to private companies, but also to utilities, because we see how they are moving towards more sustainable energy resources, right? And in that sense, a green sukuk meets their demands perfectly well. So why not? Absolutely, we see a lot of overlapping areas in that context.
Yeah, I'm agreed. There's not like 100% alignment, but maybe 90%. It's very interesting how institutions like the Global Alliance for Banking and Values has accepted Islamic banks. I think now there are 2 or 3 Islamic banks in this alliance. So this is a good beginning. Thank you. And so I remember that to the audience that you can just address questions, okay, to the chat. And Raja, another question. You were talking before about the Islamic banks and the crisis of 2008. It is true that the previous crisis was more about debt, but for me was the very beginning of see how or what was Islamic finance, and how this new thing for me was showing us that was better, was more based in real economy and so on. So what are the difference between the Islamic banks and conventional banks? This maybe it's so obvious, but sometimes some people of our audience maybe don't know what are the differences, and how do you think Islamic banks now can fight against this crisis, which is different
Yes.
from the previous one?
Excellent question. Yes, if you, I'll just touch briefly about the difference, because I think, as you said, it's well known, no need to explain them maybe a little bit deeper. But the main distinguished between them, conventional banks, usually their roles is on how to give loans. And they create money from money, while Islamic banks, they usually try to sell a product. So even if they give loan, they tie the loans with the commodities. And the commodities, usually it's a specific demand from their customers, either household or investors, to provide them with the service through a commodity, and they bought it and they sell it to them. So this is tied, the Islamic bank, to the real sector. So they will not be able to enlarge our big bubbles compared to the real sector. Given the financial, the conventional banks, they may give more loans as long as you give the collateral and they secure their loans, they give loans. Several studies, they related any financial, any economic crisis, either financial or non-financial, most of them is underlying of this crisis debt, which Islamic bank by religions it's prohibited to create money from money, so they need to tie it to products. So this is the main principle. As you know, the interest rate is prohibited in Islam. So Islamic bank need to create different products. And if you see the last maybe 30 years, the Islamic finance was one of the most innovative instruments in our globe, where they provided more services to help even financial institutions and investors to diversify their risk through these many instruments that have different risk and different rate of return. When it's come to how it will affect the crisis, it's actually, the crisis sometimes is not related to the financial sector by itself. It's a business cycle somehow between the supply and demand side. But with the Islamic bank, as they tied, or Islamic financial institutions as a whole, as they tied more to the real sector, so they avoid to depress the real sectors or companies once they have a decline in the demand on their product, and they could not give back some of loans or some of the payment to the financial institutions, as they are partner either through the product they provided through murabaha or through maybe ijara, or they have an equity side with the institutions or with the real sector banks and companies in the real sectors. Then the Islamic institutions will avoid of putting a pressure or liquidating this type of institutions or companies, because they're sharing the risk. So the difference between Islamic finance and the conventional finance, Islamic finance, they're sharing somehow the risk with the real sector. Of course, the sharing of the risk will be a little bit different. With the equity, they're sharing a complete risk. With the more murabaha and ijara, they're sharing a small part of the risk. But with the sharing of the risk, then they try to avoid of dumping the real sector and ask them to liquidate them to get their money through the collateral they have, and they maybe provide them with some loans to help them to recover. So the recession will be smoother and the economy will get faster usually from such a recession. But this is if we, for example, have more Islamic institutions more than just only bank. Because as I said, bank is supervised by central bank, and most of their instruments, most of them, maybe 90% of their instruments is through murabaha and ijara, which have a similarity to a conventional part, but a different risk a little bit. But the other Islamic financial institutions, they more on the equity side, musharaka and mudaraba, which sharing the risk and have more benefit to the economy. And this is why I said, have more regulation specialized for Islamic bank that will help the Islamic bank to have more contributions to the economy through equity side and musharaka and mudaraba. And this has its own benefit to the economy and reduce the depth of the recessions and make the get out of the recessions a little bit smoother. And that's what we need most of the time, the sharing of the risk between the two sectors. In theory, we thought dividing, as you know, in the conventional economy, the classical, new classical and classical economy, we divided the economy to two parts, financial institutions and banking, part of them, which is the big part, and the real sector. And we thought bank through loans, they will supervise the real sector and make it more efficient. This is in theory. But when it's come to empirical, as been mentioned in different studies, including, as I just mentioned, Stiglitz and Locus, they found out the contribution of financial sector is less than what we expected. And they only contribute a small part, specifically banking and stock market, small part to the growth of the economy. And this is where the Islamic financial institutions may play bigger roles and change the whole relation between financial institutions and real sector.
And Raja, in your opinion, how do you see the industry in 5 years' time? Would be more digital, more, it will grow in also in other countries? How do you see the industry, and especially in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, I think with Saudi Arabia, the drop of oil price and the bigger need for more, it's not in Saudi Arabia, in the whole GCC, the drop of the oil price and the need for more liquidity. And since the society, the demand from the society is to buy more Islamic related products, which is accepted by Sharia, then the issuing of sukuk, more financial institutions will be emerge more there. As you know, Islamic finance, the growth of Islamic finance driven mainly in first part by the demand from Muslim community, which is creating this opportunity for more businesses. And this is where the supply try to match demand. And as the economy developed, then it become more complicated and more also wider range beyond the Muslim community to non-Muslim community, where they provided, as I just mentioned, different products that will help to diversify the portfolio. So I think given the situation that GCC now on, and also the COVID-19, which will have a bigger impact for how we will handle the economy and also the digitalizations of the economy, financial institutions, the debt side, all this type of things. I think we will have merge new things maybe, and a change in how we will handle the economy after the COVID-19 hopefully relief soon. So we expect it will be a higher growth, not maybe in 2020, maybe in the end of 2021, early 2022, we'll have maybe higher growth in Islamic financial institutions. And I think it will be more in digitalized side than fintech more than what we noticed now.
Okay, let's see what happened. And talking about the economy in the MENA region, the GCC, Concepcion, you have like a perfect view. You were talking before that you were working alone to an Arab country. What is your opinion? I know it's very difficult to, but maybe your perception, your view is better than ours, because you are working in Washington in the World Bank. So what do you think is going to happen in the region, specifically in the GCC, with the oil prices and all the situation, the pandemic? Are you optimistic or not? Your micro is off.
Sorry. So what a question. I wish, an interesting question. I wish I would have a crystal ball, no? And I could be like a fortune teller. Yeah. We live, I mean, at the beginning of this crisis, I was asked many times, what do you think about this? And the only answer that we have is that right now this is not a financial crisis, right? I mean, the 2008 was a financial crisis. So, and when it's finance, you know how to fix it. But the problem is that this is not a financial crisis. This is a health crisis that has become an economic crisis, and that as of today we don't see the exit, because we don't see also. We don't have the solution, right? And we don't really see what we are facing early. I mean, we have the World Health Organization, which is giving like new data, new on COVID on a recurrent basis. I mean, for us, of course, we need to be optimistic. No, I mean that's the way forward. Otherwise. It wouldn't be, we wouldn't be here. No, so I think the good thing for all these economies, especially the GCC countries, is that they have already started many years ago a process of diversification. And this is good for anything, right? It's good for economy, it's good for finance, it's good for your own private assets, right? You don't want to put all your eggs in the same basket. So, for example, in the sense of, you have countries that they have established themselves as logistic hubs. as travel hubs, and also little by little you have Dubai, no, as a big center of financing for the GCC countries and the whole region. So I think that's part of the way forward, right? Regardless of what happens with the price of oil, and what I also think is that in the middle of all of this, the problem and the new challenge that we are facing is that COVID is something that has affected every single part of all of us and all the economic actors at the same time. So, I mean, if they tell us in December last year that the whole world will shut down by April, nobody will have said this is possible, right? We will have said this is impossible. But imagine, for example, a country where all the economic actors have been closed. So that doesn't allow you to even to recover. So that's the reason why it's so difficult to predict anything. Of course, the key factor here is when we find a vaccine. No? When we find a vaccine, then the track where all the countries and all the economies in the GCC countries were going, I mean, it should keep going up and moving forward.
Yeah. I think we are all waiting for the vaccine. So
yes,
that would be the best news. So thank you very much. I think we're on time now. So we have some questions from the audience. Maybe this is for you, Raja. The second one, I have a very interesting one here, saying that in order to better understand the Sustainable Development Goals from a Sharia perspective, can you possibly share what the Islamic vision of development is? Is there any Islamic vision of development, Raja?
Yes, usually in Islam, the main goal, how to help the individual and the society both. So there is a balance in development, in this case, between, and it does not ignore the individual need for the society. So the balance in this case, trying to maximizing the better off of the whole society, is one of the main objectives of Maqasid al-Sharia, how to help the whole society, including the individual. So the balance between them will help the society to be in better situation than what they are of and serving themselves. And when you consider in Sharia, for example, zakah and also awqaf, charity, all this non-profit type of things, this kind of a recognition, any economy by itself will have a failure. So to cover this failure of any economy, then the Sharia brought up this kind of instrument. As a zakah, you know, it's one of the Islamic pillars, which is an important items that in Islam, rich people need to give up to the poor, which the redistribution of the income in the society to make the whole society better off than just only a small part of the society at the expense of the others. So if you see how this Maqasid al-Sharia is coming up, the improvement for the whole society and increasing the better off the society in different way from different instruments and creating this kind of balance.
Okay, very interesting. It's always good to say that the Islamic, in my opinion, the Islamic view is always for the mankind. It's not only for Muslims, no?
Yeah.
So that's always, it's like Islamic finance is, in my opinion, is the perfect system for everyone, not just thinking in
exactly.
the Muslims.
And this is why in Islam, the Maqasid al-Sharia or the Islamic objectives in Sharia most of the time is considering all people living, even animals. So if in helping animals, helping human being, regardless, has a benefit for the individual thereafter, and also encouraged by Sharia people to contribute for them for the whole society, regardless of the religion, also for animals. So it's not only for the human being. So this is to show you how wider range, in this case, the Sharia tried to help the whole society, the whole globe. And the impact have more positive than just only on a small community or Muslim community.
Thank you, yeah. We have another one, maybe it's difficult, I don't know. What would be the role of Retakaful in securing, both in sovereign and securing deliverables? Sorry, you can read it, because now we have many questions. And okay, what would be the role of Retakaful in securing, both in sovereign and securing deliverables and enhancing transparency? Imagine that the multilateral agency, ENI, is funding a large project, for example, the digitalization of all primary schools in the poorest member countries. I don't know if who of you can answer that question, or maybe anybody in the audience. Concepcion, you know that? You can answer, or you have an opinion? It's very specific because it's about Takaful, which is Islamic insurance.
So what I can tell you, sorry. Please, go ahead.
After you.
Concepcion, please, go, you.
Oh, okay, thank you. No, I just can tell you that all our lending instruments, so by default, the lending instruments that they are our own lending instruments, like the World Bank, those are, they don't have to do with Islamic finance or with any kind of finance, right? They are like, I don't want to say plain vanilla because we do structured finance, but they are like a simple, they are not enrolled to any kind of underlying concepts. But the assistance that we give to countries, for example, to Malaysia to issue the Green Sukuk, to Jordan to develop the Sukuk law, all that we play a role there. Or for example, on our role, because we play a role in IFIM as issuing for IFIM, because IFIM is an institution by itself. So they hire the World Bank Treasury to be like to play the role of the treasurer. So for them, we can issue sukuks and we do the market assessment. But for the own funding of the World Bank as a bank, we are not allowed to have any kind of financial products that will be underlying any kind of religion, if you want.
Okay.
So this is our approach.
Okay. And Raya, you wanted to say something?
Very quick, if I understood the question very well, the takaful will reduce the risk on the society, but in the same time, the main objective of takaful to avoid the conflict of interest. So it's not only one party will benefit from it, as you know, like in insurance type of things, and the one who been insured will try to maximizing his benefit from the insurance. Takaful, as it's been in Islam, through sharing the risk and sharing the benefit, this is will help sharing the risk, reducing the risk on the individuals and also on companies. At the same time, it's avoiding the conflict of interest. This is if it's designed very well. Of course, sometimes the design of the takaful or maybe how they handle it might not be accurate as to get the same result as we expected here.
Okay. We have a very interesting suggestion how from Dr. Turkistani saying that the World Bank, maybe a suggestion to the World Bank to start a line of research using the analysis of experimental economics to examine Islamic finance principles and values practiced on the ground by studying in a long period the behavior of people in specific areas to find how healthy is their financing. Maybe it's a good idea, Concepcion?
Yeah, I mean, I will be happy to pass that along to my colleagues on the Islamic Finance group and the research department. Absolutely, that's maybe a perspective that they haven't thought about. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm not sure, Laura, if you can see if somebody has up their hand, we can, because I think our director, Celia, wanted to talk. Yeah.
Sí, hola. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was really, Raja and Concepcion, really informing and really nice. And both of you have worked for international development. And I remember about perhaps 10, 12 years ago, Raja, you were among us in one of the first conferences we gave in the center. Also, Dr. Abdullah was there. And the world there, it was a total different picture. And the future we thought, it was nothing to do with what has been happening over these 12 years. And one of the questions at the time, 10 years ago, we were so convinced that globalization was there forever. And from all these international institutions, seemed like all the financial world was going to be more and more globalized. And at the time, the problems were how to adapt into this globalization. Now, after the COVID, the feeling is that our economies are closing up. And I'm not sure whether Islamic finance will still be even like more local, but it will be like having like less impact in the global finance. I don't know, I would like a little bit to hear both of your opinions on this idea of whether we're going less global and more local. And from an international institution, what do you think of it? Thank you.
Yeah.
Go on, Raja.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. COVID-19 kind of turning point on the global economy. So I think more protections will be seen in the global economy. Maybe more regionalisms, more than globalizations will emerge. We'll see countries more focusing inside, specifically in some products. So this could be seen on the real side of the economy. But financing most of these activities, most of the time they need finance. And this is why I might think, although on the real sector and on product side, there will be a little bit of production and we might be in a global where less globalizations happened. But on the same time, I think the financial institutions might continue serving these kind of activities, because giving the protections and giving the need for most of countries to produce inside, specifically what they call the strategic and more important products, and they try to avoid the concern which they are living in, specifically things related to health or related to food security, then finance needed. And finance here needed through two types, either FDI, as you know, but also there is another instrument, I think it will continue playing an excellent role, which is a portfolio and work of capital that try to using this opportunity. So although the globalizations will a little bit reduced with what's going on now in WTO, but at the same time, I think the financial institutions could continue, and this will give more opportunity for Islamic finance, as they most of the time taking some equity or providing some different services than the conventional finance to grow even faster. And as I said, for smaller community through fintech, they will find a way through the fintech to provide it.
Okay, I think we have one more question.
If I may, Gonzalo?
Sí? Yeah.
Hi. Yes, I just wanted to add to Raja question. Sorry, to Raja answer, and because I think Celia question is very, very relevant. I think right now, and we are seeing this with Islamic finance and all over the world, that there is a big tension between globalization and what is local, right? And you see it all over. But I think that our role as multilateral institutions is to go against that, because I think what the world is showing to us as well is that the only solution is global. And especially for this kind of thing. I mean, if you find a vaccine, but the United States buy all the vaccines, and then and in Europe or in the Middle East there are no vaccines, then you are just restricting the movement of people, because then and you are in a way making your economy suffer, right? Because we are too much interconnected at this point to go to the local level, although it could happen, right? So I think in the same way that, for example, the European Central Bank has in a way directed that help and link their help to green, and everything that has to do with sustainability in a way, I think Islamic finance can play a similar role, right? Because I mean, there are in the Islamic markets by default, there tends to be a lot of liquidity, because the kind of assets where Islamic liquidity can invest, they have more rules and they are more restricted, right? So maybe that the world, and as Raja was saying, will need to invest in things, right? And we need money to get out of this situation. So it could benefit out of that pot of liquidity in Islamic finance. So in summary, yes, there is that tension is there, and our role is in a way to fight it, because the consequences, because the only sustainable solution is to remain being global. But I think what this is showing also is that globalization hasn't worked for everybody, right? That the way that we have been doing globalization until now, it just has worked for a few. And I think in a way, a little bit is happening the same thing with digitalization, right? And all the IT, that we have to make sure that it works for everybody.
Okay, thank you, Concepcion. I think we're on time, but Dr. Kalim Alam from King Abdulaziz University wanted to address a question. So please go on.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Good evening.
Walaikum assalam.
Yeah, my question is very simple, but I hope it will be answered. The question is, recently released debt data showed that the world has gone to $258 trillion debt, which is approximately 331% of the global GDP. So which is extremely high. And I think now the world has to relook at the way we finance. Since both of you are from the multilateral organization, World Bank and IMF, you have to look into it. It's no more just Islamic finance, which is to deal with the issues of interest. It should be even the conventional system and the way the multilateral organizations, they lend. They have to look into the way the non-interest-based mechanic lending. And as a radical thinker, I mean, now since the COVID has brought up the issue of whether the countries should concentrate on their dealing with the COVID-19 and its after effects and the economy locally, or they should also concentrate in the repayment of the debt and the interest. So do you see, I mean, beside the earlier part, do you see, I mean, or I'm thinking too radical, that is the world economy, I mean, the organization, multilateral organization, and the leading rich economies, do you see they can forego and forgive the interests of the countries which is above their principle which they have lent? Do you see that possibility in the future for the world economic solidarity? Thank you.
Do you have any comments, Raja?
Yes, I agree. The debt increased since the financial crisis 2008. So till now, it was less than, I think it was around maybe 150, 170 at that time. Now it's more than, as you just mentioned, 280, which really big numbers. And this is where, as several studies mentions, the debt to GDP usually is a cause of volatility and the cause of recessions. So we need to solve it. And as I just mentioned, after the financial crisis 2008, there are a lot of empirical studies and there are a lot of theoretical discussions among scholars that to reduce the debt to GDP and enhance companies to go more on equity side more than debt side. And most of the studies that link the long-term growth and profit of a company as they have more on the equity side. And if they are more on the debt side, they will be in the risk, in the higher risk. So now there is a lot of talk, a lot of empirical studies, a lot of discussions on the academic side, but it has not been yet, in my opinion, reached to the level where the international institutions adapted and they start to advise accordingly. So we still maintain the old system as it, which the banking sector is the core of it to finance that. The financial institutions is a less percentage when it comes to the total financial institutions. And they are the one who channel, even stimulus package, they are the one who channels to the real sector. And according, to support what you said, after the financial crisis 2008, and even on this COVID-19, most of, or at least a higher percentage of a stimulus package that been spent, it went to the stock market and increased the price of stocks markets compared to the fundamentals. And we notice now there is kind of a diversion between the real sectors and the financial sectors, specifically in developed economies. And this is because of this distinguish between financial institutions and then use the interest rate and the debt compared to sharing the risk between the financial institutions and the real sector. Coming to your question, do we think in the future this will emerge? I think, as we noticed, there is a lot of talk, a lot of empirical studies and several of theoretical talk about this issue after the financial crisis been taking place specifically in developed countries and also in some of these international institutions. I think most of the time this will take more than 10 years to be adapted by the market and to be seen as a part of the market. Will this one will end the interest rate? I don't think so, but I think it will reduce this the appetizer to have more debt to more equity side. But this will not end the debt. I think we're going to live with the same system for a while. I think the Islamic finance can provide a solution. At least now the IMF consider part of the article for discussions, Islamic finance. So it was not before that, but now it's part of the article for discussions has been approved by the board of the IMF before, I think, a year ago. So I think we are going in the right direction, but not yet. I think this will take a longer time.
Okay, thank you, Raja. We are about to finish. There's one person who has addressed a couple of questions. One is about the UN Development Goals. I think this has been already answered. Another, Concepcion, this is the last one. He said, how will the vulnerability of the poorer countries post-COVID-19 be protected by multinational organizations? So I think, I don't know. It's a difficult one or an easy one. We can talk about that for years, right? But
yeah, I mean, actually, to help the poorer countries is one of our it's on our statement, our vision. No, when you, for those of you that have ever been at the entrance of the World Bank, in big letters there is our dream is a world free of poverty and with shared prosperity. You know, those are the twin goals that our president says.
Beautiful.
So I mean, how the vulnerability? I mean, we are always looking into these solutions, but of course we need to work within the possibilities that we have. No, but I mean, that's one of our aims, and that's what we are trying to do, and to help them be ready, and to right now, as of today, to help them having liquidity and face whatever health crisis they are having at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I think we are out of time. I appreciate a lot your presence here today, and Thank you very much, Raja, Concepcion, and our partners in Saudi Arabia, in Jeddah, and to everybody for their participation. So stay tuned, and I know, Celia, you want to say something just to close?
No, just goodbye.
Okay.
مع السلامة وفرصة سعيدة.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and stay tuned.
Okay, thank you.
Stay safe. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Assalamu.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Gracias.